Well, hello. I live in a very, very, very fine house, just like the song. And I do happen to have two cats, also like the song, as well as a husband who is not in the song. The two cats and husband are what make this very, very fine house my home. We've lived here now for 14 years. From my calculations, this is the 25th very, very fine place I've lived in my 75 years. Along the way, I've accumulated, among others, an apartment in a house where Leah Pine now lives, a little green plywood cabin in Good News Bay, Alaska, a White House on Webster Street where I was living when Bill and Linda Lucero pedaled by on their bicycles and invited me to the Unitarian Fellowship, and a little blue house also on Webster Street where I lived for 25 years, longer than any other place, and where I raised my daughter. I'm speaking to you from our basement, or should I say our storage center. It's one of three such storage centers here, the others being the garage and collectively our closets. I'm surrounded by empty bins. There are many, many empty bins, but there are also many, many full ones waiting to be emptied. Emptying bins has been one of our pandemic activities. They say that the first half of life is for gathering, and we did a good job of gathering. The second half is for dispersing. The empty bins are indications that we are well into dispersing. We have designated Wednesdays as bin day, with an agreed upon segment of that day for tackling the contents of a bin. And though we have in reality only honored one Wednesday as bin day, we still call Wednesdays bin day. And every time we empty a bin, we call it Wednesday, even if the day has another name. The pandemic has helped us to focus on dispersing or emptying bins. Bin contents have been donated, discarded, assigned to relatives or friends, with remainders stuffed into adjoining bins to be tackled on a future Wednesday. We started this activity well before the pandemic, and it will likely continue through the pandemic on into some kind of binless, virus-free future. One advantage of Bin Day is the rediscovery of saved but forgotten treasures. And one of my rediscovered treasures is this album that I made for my parents in celebration of their 40th wedding anniversary in 1982. It has relevance to today's topic because it surfaced during a bin day and because it is about houses. My father worked for Southwestern Bell Telephone during his career, and over the years he was frequently transferred. We moved every year or two, from Kansas City to Sunflower, to Manhattan, to Hayes, to Salina, to Topeka, to Wichita, and back to Topeka, resulting in 13 different houses to call home by the time I graduated from high school. For this album, which I called a Chronology of Homes, I asked my father for a listing of addresses and the approximate years of tenure that we lived in each of those houses. Then I traveled Kansas with my brother, taking pictures of each house. Finally, I asked each of my siblings to write down some memories associated with each house. Then I assembled all of that into this album. At the beginning of the album, I pasted the list of addresses in my father's handwriting, and I also handwrote the passage from the Haunting House curriculum that Walt just read. Then I put in the photographs and the memories from me and my siblings for each house. So it looks like this. Homes, a chronology for Mom and Dad on the occasion of their wedding anniversary, December 12th, 1982. And I know you can't read it, but I'm going to share it anyway. This is a listing of the houses, all the different places we lived, the addresses, and my dad's memory of the years that we lived each one. And he told us whether we rented that house or owned that house. And, anyway, I'm glad to have that. So I'm just going to read a couple of passages out of here that kind of illustrate my sister's sense of humor and kind of what we were doing. The first memory, kind of falling apart here, is from a house in Kansas City where we lived with my father's parents for a short period of time. And Joe wrote, "This is the first house I remember. One afternoon I was with Grandma in her bedroom, which was at the front of the house. She was cleaning her room. She put her rocking chair up on top of her bed so she could dust her floor, but every time she put it up there, I took it down. She finally got so mad at me that she took me by one arm and one leg and threw me out the door. As I sailed by the kitchen door, I remember seeing my Aunt Frances standing at the kitchen sink or stove. She looked up as I sailed past. I'm sure she can verify my story." Well, this is a family joke. The whole time I was growing up, our grandmother was not the kind of person who would ever do anything like that, but Joe was insistent that that had in fact happened, and that was her memory of that house. I also included a page where I had my parents' wedding picture, and then also a picture of the church where they were married, which was St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Kansas City. So, we lived in two different houses in Manhattan. In one of them, Joe wrote, "I noticed one Christmas that the presents from Santa were wrapped in the exact paper that I had seen Mom buy at the store. So much for Santa Claus. I also remember one cold, gloomy, boring, late afternoon while Mom was taking a nap, getting the brilliant inspiration to play barber. Of course, I was the barber, Joe, and Kathy was the willing but hapless victim. Next, I remember Mom going berserk. Next, I remember Kathy getting permission to wear a scarf during school till her hair grew back. I had my head shaved. And myself playing the part of the great protector on the way home from school every day, trying to keep the other kids from pulling her scarf off." Probably most families have a barber in their midst at one time or another. So at another house in Manhattan, I wrote, "Mom asked me if I'd please go get her a diaper for Elaine. I remember pausing to think about it, and then deciding, well, okay, I'd do it for Mom, but that baby could stay wet as far as I was concerned." Okay. This is the last one. Salina, in Salina we lived in a little house on Larson Street, which was close to the Methodist University there. And I wrote this about Salina. "I remember peeking through the Venetian blinds into the folks' bedroom one afternoon to see what this Sunday nap business was all about. After that, I told everyone that my mom was going to have a baby. I never did figure out what happened to that baby." Salina was also where I went to Frank Hageman Elementary School for 3rd and 4th grade, and many years later it surfaced that one of my classmates was Rick Toland, who turned out to be my younger sister's husband. And the two of us had been interviewed by a newspaper for some reason back then, and his parents had saved that article. My parents hadn't. But in the article, they had asked each of us what we wanted to be when we grew up. And Rick had said he wanted to be a cowboy, which he kind of turned out to be. And I wanted to be an Eskimo. And I did go to Alaska. So anyway, this was one of our pandemic activities. It's helped keep me contented during this stay-at-home time. And now it's your turn to tell us whether you are keeping actively busy, taking time for reflection, feeling cooped up and going crazy. So, thanks a lot.